so much for joining me. Dr. Byrd has an extensive career and a lot of twists and turns that we're going to get into. But she is, thank you so much for your service, a veteran of the U.S. military of 28 years. She is retired now, but she still serves in so many different facets. Thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Byrd.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, so we are getting into it today. We're talking about, in the Style Symposium, leadership and as it pertains to business and fashion and beauty and all the different things that I think we as women are utilizing in our personal space to show our confidence, show our expertise, and like we are going to talk about, show our authenticity to really lead by example. So let's get into a little bit about your career. How did you get into the military? Because you left the military as Lieutenant Colonel.
Yes.
And that is a huge deal. So how do you go all the way to that in 28 years? Give me like the short version.
Right. Well, I couldn't believe that I rise to the level of Lieutenant Colonel because I never intended to. Initially I came involved with the Army was because, I'm an immigrant. We're an immigrant family. So by the time I went off to college, we just didn't have enough money to send me off to college. So I had to find a way to pay for it, right? So I competed for various scholarships and the Army ROTC gave me a full scholarship, and which enabled me to go to, the private college, Claremont McKenna College in Southern California, because I grew up, my family immigrated first to, to LA area. So I grew up in LA area, in Fullerton to be exact. So, but anyway, so I ended up, getting involved, and I only did it initially for money, for scholarship. But then when I got involved, I really felt like it really gave me a lot of opportunity to exercise leadership. They teach leadership and exercise leadership. So I stayed, and I'm surprised that, as a scholarship student, I had to give back, at least 4 years, of time. But I stayed 28, so.
24 past your intended, right?
That's right.
As far as your travels, and I know that before we hopped on here, you were talking about kind of the multiple hats, different identities that you have had throughout your career. You are currently a professor at the Inouye Center for, I believe, Security Studies, Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies in Hawaii. And so when you think about maybe even teaching, that's a whole different persona sometimes, because you are working with students who all have different learning styles, and you are presenting materials that may not be their favorite thing, right? So making things kind of fit to how people learn it, but also feel like they're retaining it, is a certain skill that you have to kind of develop. So when you think about leading in a classroom, how do you bring out your personal style inside of that?
Right. Well, leadership is also theory and practice, right? And the practice piece is really important because I think that effective leaders are those who are able to analyze the group of people that you have to lead, and then an environment surrounding it, and adjust accordingly, without losing your authenticity. It's you're adjusting, but still be authentic. How do you do that quickly? More quickly you're able to do it, you're becoming more effective quickly, right? So I think it's back to practice, as in practice. So it's a many years of trial and error. You look at your models, you look at the theory, and then coming together and see, okay, how is all that principle fit with me? And then trying it out. And then when you try out, sometimes it works and sometimes you learn about, oh, it doesn't quite work. So all these many years of scars and experience that make you effective. So, I think that for me is the experience and trial and error was the key. And of course, being in the military from the very early age, I was able to practice leadership. I was given opportunity to practice leadership. So I was able to hone in on my, that skill of leadership. So when I'm a teacher, it's a different form, and then when I'm leading like a young troops is different, because my teaching job is primarily my students are the mid to senior level military officer, diplomats, all these government officials from Asia Pacific region. Right. So many times they're also second English as a second language. So I always have a special empathy for them, because English is a second language for me. I had to learn as a, much older person. So anyway, so all that come together to, for me to lead my students who are learning, and also, leading in a different context.
I mean, it just seems like when we originally were thinking about this style symposium, a lot of what we do at College of Style is trying to redefine what it means to be a style icon. And so it doesn't just mean I'm a fashion designer. It could mean I am a great professor, or I am a great leader of my troops, like you said. So when you think about something that helps you bring out your own personal style, if you're thinking about the transition from military life to civilian life, how do you juxtapose those two things, or merge the two, if you can?
Right. Well, not just for me, not just being the military and the into civilian, but also I'm originally from Myanmar. I'm a Burmese American, right? So I have my Asian background. So all of that has to come into play, because at the beginning, I want, just like every kid, I just want to be just American, just like everybody else. I don't like being different, right? I see that as a liability. But as I get older, I started to realize that diversity, that unique perspective makes me, and because of that, I'm able to play different role. So, because what I'm doing today is like, I even though I'm a professor, we also are diplomats, because we have to deal with the international audience, and we are also projecting the American interest, right? We're not there. DOD, Department of Defense, doesn't give us money so that we can just, well, it does want you, they do want you to, project American interest. So, but now, because I'm a Burmese American, a lot of the time, they identify with me, my student identify. But also, as I was saying, when it's come to style, I don't know if my colleague James said anything, but I wear my Burmese clothes to teach.
Did not. He didn't tell me this.
Yes, because it has become, well, it started because my student from Myanmar started giving me all these fabrics that are like, they have very distinct fabrics. And then some of them started sewing clothes for me. So I in their honor, I started wearing. But then when I started wearing it, I felt like, oh my gosh, this is me. I don't have to pretend I'm like other Americans. I'm an American at heart. I definitely am, because I serve, I have signed up to give my life for the protection of this country. But that, when I put on that clothes, it just fits as in like it both symbolically, and also physically fit. And that's when I realized I was able to, that helped me practice more, even my authentic leadership. It just fits. When you start, everything fits. Then it just, I don't know, everything fell into place. Yes, everything falls into place. So I was able to do that. Yeah.
That's so great. Okay,
in Hawaii too. Also, Hawaii is where East meets West, right? On the mainland, I always a little bit feel like I was always an imposter, or I was always outsider looking in. But when I came to Hawaii, this is like, it is still United States, but still has so many Asian flavor. And I just felt in like, it is so comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I don't even have that level of comfort when I go back to Myanmar. I travel a lot to Myanmar to do a lot of work. And still, I'm not quite, I'm right there. I'm also foreign there, you know? So I was starting to feel like, oh my gosh, I can't fit in anywhere. But then I came to Hawaii, and then Hawaii just gave me that perfect blend of East and West together.
That's great. Now, who she's talking about, let me just break in on this part because James, Colonel James Minnick, retired, is how we actually connected. And it's so great because we have this USC kind of Trojan bond. We both have attended USC. I did the Doctor of Organizational Change and Leadership, and I think you did the Doctor of Educational Leadership. And so we kind of have this whole Pac-12, symbolism going on. Um,
Yes.
and so
So am I. I got my EDD from USC.
it's so crazy. We're all connected in all these different ways. And so when he did not tell me that you are, wearing, some clothing and items that really help to bring out your authenticity. And what we were talking about earlier is when there are, a lot of business owners now who may or may not have been in the military and kind of go from their day job, let's say, is being in uniform, and then maybe they have like their side gig, and they're working on their own ideas at home, and they're building their own businesses. It's hard sometimes, at least in my head, to think about the transition to maybe turning one thing off and turning something else on, or feeling like there's a separate identity. When we were talking about identities coming into the conversation, it's kind of like, do we, when we take off the uniform, it's still there, right? And so being able to express yourself and say, okay, well, how much room do I have for self-expression while I'm in this uniform? And do people recognize my still sense of authority or leadership or position or role in my on my base or wherever I'm stationed when I'm not in uniform? So how do you kind of transition that if for someone who may be in the military or someone who just wears a uniform to work, whether it's military or not, to then take that off and say, okay, I'm going to do this and show my expression in a different way, without feeling like you're minimizing one or the other?
Right. Well, you mean, it's like you said, it's still you underneath all that, right? But in by changing the clothing, for me, it's like you emphasize certain things, right? You emphasize, but you still are practicing the same authentic self. But I didn't get to that, especially in the military, right? Because majority of my male, most all of my role model are like James, right? A male leaders. So I tried their way of doing things, but it just didn't work. Then after a while, you say, you know what? Forget that because it's not working. I'm just going to just go with me. But that I didn't arrive to that until I would say like 15 to 20th year of leading troops, But I was also very lucky because I was recruited when I was a first lieutenant. I was recruited into special operation forces. And special ops is a little bit different than the conventional force. They allow for a lot more flexibility, and they really encourage more entrepreneurial sense. It's a smaller force, and so we will be so I will work with a lot of Navy SEALs and Rangers, and we will travel into an operational environment. And then, I've always worked in the Asia. Asia is my area of operation. So when I go in there, they depend on me. They have to depend on me because I'm the expert there. So, because of my expertise, I was able to sometimes lead, right? Without having to, they don't have any choice because they don't know the environment.
Right.
So, having that a little bit of edge is also very helpful. And leadership comes in, the subject matter expertise, right? Depending on the different contexts, like I was saying, and you're able to utilize the context to the best, to benefit you or benefit your to optimize your leadership skill at that moment.
Exactly. And just to kind of highlight a few more things, I know I let you know a little bit about her background at the top, but she has served as a linguist, cultural advisor to the U.S. delegations attending the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations Regional Forum. She has the POW/MIA recovery negotiations in Myanmar, Burma, and Operation Caring Response to Cyclone, I'm going to say this wrong, Nargis, is that right? And U.S. Myanmar Burma human rights dialogue. So when we think about just really getting into the heart of where people are super concerned, like I'm going straight, like let's just talk street here. When people are concerned about what we wear and who we are through those outfits and through the makeup that we throw on, we are always judged, right? We are always judged when we walk in a room, whether people say they're judgmental or not. It happens. People are like, oh, she does this, or oh, she's never been there, or whatever it is. And when we think about where we come from and how we can exude the confidence to negate all of that, the first impressions of everything, and just really be centered, what is it that you do that you can say as a tip to anybody watching that can just let go of all of that extra and say, do you? What would be your piece of advice or your one tip?
Well, one, I do like if I'm going to do like a public speaking, right, to a large crowd, right, and I do a little breathing exercise, and then there was one time I saw the woman do a stance, right, like a power pose, and that really helps me. For me, like it's like I'm a more of a kinetic person, I guess. So I'm, by doing those, it get me all pumped up, and then I'm able to walk in without any problem. Before then, I was struggling, especially like large crowds and stuff. I started getting nervous, and sometimes I even forget my name, because I was so nervous. So I'm always like, okay, if I remember but now if I remember my name, I'll be fine. But now, going through that, it really is, I don't have, and plus, of course, practice, right? So I think that many times women don't take on a little bit of lean in. Their instinct is like, oh, no, that's too scary, or I don't have enough. I don't have enough of this. I don't have that. I don't have that. And many women focus on what they don't have rather than what they have. And so I realized, and as I was watching my male colleagues, also my male colleagues are always like, they lean in, even though they know half of what I do, what I know, but they just like go in and I don't care what people think. And I'm like, wow, that's really, helpful. So I started thinking, I can't, having those power poses, and I don't care. I know this subject, I know what I know. And if I don't know, I'll just tell them I don't know. And that'll be okay.
Yeah,
that'll be okay.
When we were talking earlier, you mentioned how, there weren't a lot of, let's say, females in higher up positions to actually look up to, right? To say, okay, if I'm ascending this ladder, like I'm really reaching, role models that are not looking like me. So when you are thinking about all of the people who are maybe coming after you, who you might be this role model for, right? What are some of the things that you wish or are like wish upon them to start changing the mold a little bit now that you have retired, to say, okay, take that extra step at this point in your career so that the people behind you can have more people to look up to like you?
Right. So I have a really definite incident that one of the young women who just started, I think she's just a second lieutenant, coming to me and she said, I really like the work that I do in the military, but I am really, I don't like the fact that I have to, suppress my desire to be pretty. She wants to put on makeup and all that stuff. And she feel, it's not that military doesn't allow that, but she said she feel pressure not to look feminine. And so I just told her, no, I gave you permission to be feminine. because that's what makes you the best. That's what you are, that makes you authentic. So if you feel like you got to put on makeup and show up, fine, do that. Do that. Just do what comes naturally to you. And then when you're leading, do things that are natural. Because for me, I can't say about all the other women, I lead a little bit more of a nurturing way. I like to lead with the, kindness. I like to lead with compassion. I like to lead with empathy, right? And so those are the things that, some of the men may not practice, but that comes to me naturally. So I will do that. I will use those, right?
Yeah.
But don't feel like because many times you're being empathetic or being compassionate in the military, especially, a lot of people, there's a lot of pressure not to be compassionate. You know what I mean? Just suck it up. Just suck it up,
Just a
right?
very hard line, right?
Yeah, very hard line. And to me, that's not me. That's not me. So if I say suck it up, it's not going to look authentic. It's just not going to
it won't
bode
it
well.
won't all the same, right?
Right. And people knows that too, so that they don't follow because they just know this isn't right. It doesn't fit, they feel it, I feel it. Right.
Yeah.
So, but when I become myself, then I'm able to, I think I'm much more effective leader, but it may not look like my male colleagues the way they lead. Like, suck it up, right?
Well, not every male colleague does that either. So, it really just depends on, in your business, what is the most effective way to work with employees, if it's that, or work with troops if it's in the military, to be the most effective. And I think that we're all experiencing kind of a little bit of a shift of how people can manage employees when we are not in the same room, right? When we are logging in instead of just going down the hall and popping into the office, or saying, hey, spontaneous meeting, and people are like scrambling to do their hair to get on to a Zoom meeting instead of just already being ready and being in an office. So when you are thinking about kind of the next wave of leadership, and what that looks like, where do you find yourself gravitating towards? Is it people going back to school to really change the way they're practicing leadership? Is it just kind of a self-imposed, like, get your programs together in your own way, kind of like people going inside of themselves and saying, okay, I need to change my outwardly dialogue with my employees because now everybody is at home? Because I think that there's this weird kind of online, do we always have to turn on our camera? Are we better audio only? Like, there's so many things that have changed in the last 2020 and 2021 as far as how we are effectively managing our businesses, employees, all of that in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of like turn down economy, it's starting to ramp up, but like all of those things, what do you see as like the next wave of leadership?
I can't say, because this is totally different environment, and I myself is adjusting to it, because I'm a little bit older than you, and prior to this, I haven't really done any type of online virtual teaching or learning or anything like that. We were all focused on face-to-face, right? For me, it's a new environment, and I'm still struggling as well to trying to find the sweet spot, where's that sweet spot? So I just need more time. I think we just need more time. Again, back to practice, right? Even if it is something that works for somebody else, it may not work for you directly, cut and paste. You might have to make some adjustment because you're different, and the people that you're leading are different in the different contexts. You know what I mean? So all of that has to come together. So, but as you get more leadership experience of leading people, you're able to adjust faster. That's the whole point, is your ability to adjust. How long is it going to take for you to adjust to the new environment and new context? And I think in a way I think I was really fortunate because in the military, we change jobs all the time. And so we're giving all this different environment to practice our leadership. So you have to find a way to quickly analyze the environment that you are in and then bring out the style that you need. You know, what kind of style that is closest to who you are.
Exactly. That is a great, I didn't even think about how many times you probably do transition from one position to the next. If you are, I mean, you were in for 28 years, so obviously you've had that changeover. How many jobs do you think you've had in 28 years?
Oh my gosh, I can't even count. I can't even. So sometimes I'm in a context where I'm the expert, you know, so it's easy to lead. But in some contexts, I am not. So I have to figure out leading from behind as a supportive leader, right? So sometimes you're like leading in the front, sometimes you have to lead from the behind, sometimes you lead from the side because you want the people to take on for me, the biggest thing is I want ownership. I want people to take ownership. So I have to find a way for them to take ownership. So sometimes because of that, when I'm the expert, it can be quite dangerous because I will lead, right? I'm like, I know it all. And so just do what I said, you know? I mean, it could be difficult.
Yeah.
It could be difficult for me to get down to like, let people own it so that they will do it.
Yeah.
You know? So
That's a great point, is to, when you are leading, you're owning that space. You are owning, your expertise, your, plan of action, your strategy, whatever it is that you're putting out there. So, what is it that was attracted you to the teaching side of what you do now? Because you had a chance to just say, bye-bye, I'm getting out, I'm going home or wherever, I'm going on vacation. And then you were like, yeah, I think I'll do this other thing. So what attracted you to that?
well, it's a funny story. When I show up at the Pacific Command headquarters to work on the war on terrorism, I was specifically working the issue of a part of the team that are working in the southern Philippines, where the terrorists are, Abu Sayyaf group. So when I got there, I listened. There are like 30 of us, and I think I'm one of the 2 women there out of the 30 men, right? They're talking and talking. They're talking about we're going to kick the door down, and kill them. And then I started listening. And then also we were interviewing some of the captured terrorists. And they said, one of the reasons they joined was because they didn't have any jobs. They went to the Armed Forces of the Philippines and to get a job, and they said, no, we don't take you. And then the terrorists couldn't go on, like, you want to serve? Come on in. So I thought, our counterterrorism strategy is missing the economic piece. So when I present that, everybody laughed at me. This was back in 2003. And so when they started laughing at me, I said, you know what? I need to change their mindset. So I started researching and writing in the military journals to change their mindset. So when it does reach people. And so our latest counter insurgency operation manual has some of my ideas in it.
Nice.
And then when I came off active duty, the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies saw some of my publication, and they had invited me to come and teach there. So when I got there, right, but then I never taught, yeah, I work with people. I teach basic class, because I was a leader. So leaders always teaching something, right? But I never knew formally how to teach. So that's when I went back to school at USC, educational leadership, to learn more about how do people learn, so that I can be an effective teacher. So that's how I ended up in teaching. But I didn't mean to go into that field deliberately.
I think everything kind of just, it's a happy accident though, right? And so it's just, it's one of those job changes, right? That you mentioned so eloquently earlier, that we just, evolve. And I think that that is a great evolution. What's your next? What's after this? I know that you've done so much, and I can't even imagine, you're probably exhausted, but what are you going to do after maybe this whole teaching stint?
Well, right now I'm involved with helping the Burmese population. As you know, Myanmar had a military coup in February 1st of this year. So people are hurting, people are suffering, and there's a movement to restore democracy in Myanmar. So I'm trying to help out as much as I can. As people needed help, so I'm involved with that. So
Your
so
work
that's going to
never
take
stops. I can't imagine. You are so kind to offer your time, your expertise. I have learned so much, not just about you, but just as far as being able to be a more authentic leader, no matter what uniform you have on, no matter when you take it off, and how you project your confidence is so key to making sure that you have success in your business, in your life, in your health, all of that stuff. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.